Clearly, today's 75 basis point increase is an unusually large one, and I do not expect moves of this size to be common.
With the US announcing its biggest rate hike in years, how does it affect us here, and what does it mean for your money? Fixtures for the new Premier League season are out, with Manchester City kicking off their title defence playing away. And we check out gadgets and gizmos from the past at the National Museum's latest exhibition. Hello, you're watching The Big Story with me, Olivia Quay. Remember to subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss an episode. What the US Central Bank does to interest rates affects not just Americans, but us here in Singapore as well. And that's because the US economy is the engine powering much of the rest of the world. The Federal Reserve on Wednesday pulling off its most aggressive interest rate hike since 1994, raising its benchmark rate by 0.75 of a percentage point, taking the target range to 1.5 to 1.75%. The move comes with inflation in the US running at its fastest pace in over 40 years.
Clearly, today's 75 basis point increase is an unusually large one, and I do not expect moves of this size to be common. From the perspective of today, either a 50 basis point or a 75 basis point increase seems most likely at our next meeting. We will, however, make our decisions meeting by meeting, and will continue to communicate our thinking as clearly as we can.
So what does this mean for us here in Singapore? Those with mortgages, credit cards and even car loans will likely see an increase in their monthly interest payments when banks revise borrowing rates. This is in addition to the higher cost of living that households are already facing. Well, Singapore's stock market opened sharply higher this morning, tracking a positive session on Wall Street. But most of those gains evaporated in the afternoon, with the STI ending the day down 0.27%. Joining us is Daryl Ho, Senior Investment Strategist at DBS's Chief Investment Office. So Daryl, looking at the big picture here, inflation is high around the world, borrowing costs are rising, and of course the risk of recession is also growing. So how should investors, both large and small, position themselves in this environment?
Well, as this is the first 75 basis point hike in nearly 30 years, I think we can all tell that the Fed is very serious about tackling the inflation problem. I would say that there are two things to be mindful of. The first would be to monitor your leverage to make sure that you're not overly indebted, because borrowing costs are set to rise quite rapidly in the months ahead. Secondly, for your portfolios, I believe a favorable positioning up in quality is warranted here. Firstly, for equities, call us old-fashioned, but we believe in investing in companies that actually make profits. So stock fundamentals are going to matter again, and not just promises of future growth. For bonds, we particularly like investment-grade credit now that they are yielding more than 4%, and these are levels that are higher than the worst of the COVID crisis. So we think these are very good returns for relatively low default risk.
Well, let's focus on the opportunities out there, Daryl. What looks good to you, and conversely, what won't you be buying?
Under an inflationary environment, I think it is unquestionable that commodities are your best hedge. And for us at the CIO office, we believe that there are certain structural factors at play here that are going to see elevated prices for commodities in the medium term. These include the rising geopolitical divisions around the world that we're seeing today, as well as certain chronic underinvestment in capacities that has occurred over the last 10 years. So what do we particularly like? Firstly, we like gold. We think it is still a good inflation hedge. Noting, of course, in the decades of the 1970s and the 2000s, gold prices performed very well in those periods. For the energy sector, we particularly like the oil majors, noting that they are very well positioned to capture the upside of the higher oil prices that we're seeing today. They have also not been very aggressive in increasing their dividend payouts ever since the COVID crisis. Although some might say that the prices of these companies have run quite meaningfully this year, if you look at the fundamentals, the forward price to earnings for these companies on average are just under 10 times, which is not expensive in terms of their valuations. So I think it's still an opportunity to pick up some names if you're underinvested in these names. We in this environment would, however, avoid certain emerging market or high yield credit names, noting that in the last 75 basis point hike that we saw in 1994, this was ominously just a few years before the Asian financial crisis. So generally, when rates are rising, the indebted countries or companies would find a bit of a challenge refinancing some of the debt burdens that they do have. So we would stay cautious on some of these names as the rate hike cycle is still underway.
And Daryl, what's your advice for investors, especially those who are new to it, on how they can manage the volatility in the markets?
Well, if you're new to investing and you only came in the last 2 years or so, you may have felt like a genius coming into 2022, making all that money. But I would firstly like to say that taking a loss is very common in your investing journey. So welcome to the club. I would still say that there are two takeaways here. Firstly, not all dips are worth buying into. Those of us who are running the 2020 playbook might have been very excited about buying the dip, and you will very soon realize the wisdom in this other financial adage that we have, which is don't try to catch a falling knife, because your hands will start looking as blood red as your portfolio positions. Instead, realize that inflation does not have a quick fix like the COVID-19 had an mRNA vaccine. So I think it pays to be patient, to wait for good entry points. Secondly, I think it is worth noting that you should diversify your portfolio. I think as a new investor, some of you may be looking at one or two positions that may have suffered quite a bit of losses and you're feeling a bit anxious about it. That may be a signal that you may be overly concentrated in one or two positions. Well, now that the broader markets have all corrected to a certain degree, I think it's actually a good opportunity to start broadening the exposure of your portfolio to sectors that you may be underinvested in over this time, sectors such as commodities, for example, or even the big tech names that have been perpetually quite expensive over the last 10 years. Now the valuations look pretty undemanding. So I think this is a good opportunity to, again, diversify your portfolio so that you can stay in this investing journey for the long run and not let one or two positions take you out in the short run.
Well, that was Daryl Ho, a senior investment strategist at DBS's Chief Investment Office. Singapore's Energy Market Authority is extending measures to secure supply and stabilize prices until March 2023. Well, this comes as gas prices around the world have increased significantly due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Measures implemented since last September include having a liquefied natural gas facility on standby, directing power generation companies to maintain sufficient fuel, as well as modified market rules. Among the observations gathered from public consultations on the Healthier SG strategy, the Health Ministry finds that seniors want a healthcare plan tailored to their needs and is convenient, while younger people hope that GPs can be trained on mental health issues. If you recall, the Healthier SG strategy aims to deliver more coordinated care, including getting family doctors to play a key role in preventive care. Well, you have until August 15th to submit your feedback via an online survey at healthiersg.gov.sg. The feedback will be studied and incorporated into a white paper, which will be tabled in Parliament for debate later this year. If you usually take the bus after hours, do take note that night rider services will be discontinued from June 30th. Well, these are NR1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 8. Bus services 188R and 926 will also stop next month. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, French President Emmanuel Macron, and Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi. The leaders of the EU's three biggest countries are expected in Kiev today to show their backing for Ukraine amid its war with Russia and reassure the country over its ambitions of joining the EU. Well, separately, Ukraine has criticized France, Germany, and to a lesser extent Italy for alleged foot dragging in their support, accusing them of being slow to deliver weapons. In sports, the Premier League fixtures are out for the upcoming season, which starts a week earlier than usual. Reigning champions Manchester City will kick off their title defence away at West Ham, while the always highly anticipated Manchester United-Liverpool match is scheduled for August the 20th. Well, teams will play 16 rounds of matches before the league takes a break for the World Cup in November. Here's our sports correspondent on how the current schedule could affect the way the season plays out.
So when we consider starts, I think it's best not to think too far ahead. So maybe within the first 3 to 6 game weeks, maybe even 8, since that will be the point of the first international break. None of the big teams have a standout easy start, although Arsenal have 2 newly promoted teams in their first 4 games and only one other big team in the so-called Big Six in the first 8 game weeks. Chelsea also have a pretty manageable start too. They play Spurs at home in the second game and won't really have any major tests until Liverpool in game week 8. Liverpool, speaking of them, too have a similar type of start with an early game against Man United, which we don't know how that will pan out in the third week between games against newly promoted sides. Of the traditional big sides, in terms of toughest starts, I would say Man City does have a pretty tricky one. 2 of their first 3 home games are against newly promoted teams, which should be easy 3 points, but their first 3 away games are all potential banana skins. West Ham, Newcastle and Aston Villa, who all showed in the second half of last season that they could trouble some of the bigger sides and that they do have quality in them. I think the unprecedented mid-season break because of the World Cup this season has the potential to surprise, just like it did 2 years ago with the pandemic, throwing up some unexpected results and making the EPL very unpredictable. And a major high-level tournament in the middle of the season can really have a huge impact on some teams, as I expect it will on 1 or 2 of the challengers who are bound to suffer post-Doha. So the EPL race in the second half of the season will definitely be one to keep an eye on.
Have you ever used this contraption? Yes, that is a typewriter, and it was once considered a technological wonder. Assistant Life Editor Olivia Ho joins us with more on the National Museum's latest exhibition. Did you feel as if you were stepping back in time there, Olivia?
Yes, I did. So this exhibition is called Off on Everyday Technology That Changed Our Lives from the 1970s to the 2000s. It's in the basement of the National Museum of Singapore. I think this is one exhibition where the National Museum has succeeded in both providing very vital historical context and creating what is quite an immersive experience. So it's not just put all these devices in cases and to display. It's recreated spaces from the 1970s to the 2000s. One of them, an office filled with typewriters, including the Olivetti model that you just saw. There's another one that's an old-timey hairdressing salon and coffee shop with the coiner phone. So that was the coin-operated orange phone that was introduced in the 1980s, and it used to be everywhere. You could pay like 10 cents to make a call. Then there's a black and white photo studio where you can get your photo taken, and an accompanying dark room. So everything that is not in a glass case, you can touch, you can play with, and that makes for a very fun, interactive experience, especially for people who are into nostalgia, which is so many of us these days. It's also deeply Instagrammable, great for all those Gen Zs who are into the Y2K trend. And it's very fun for kids who may never ever get to see a pager in real life.
I wonder how long it'll take for our iPhones, our smartphones to become exhibits at a museum. Well, thanks so much to Assistant Life Editor Olivia Ho. Now, ST Food Online editor Heidi Koo has been spending quite a bit of time at Tekka Centre for her feature in the Sunday Times. So, Heidi, there's so much food to try over there. What did you try and what did you like the most?
I tasted a lot of good food there, like chendol and biryani. One stall that stood out is Prata Sagal Sambal Balada. I have been back 4 times just to eat the prata there. I was recommended by a colleague, and may I say his recommendation is spot on. The prata comes with sambal, but if you are new to the stall, you need to ask for it or they might omit it. So the sambal is made every 2 days. It is spicy and sweet from the use of a lot of red onion, and it has that savory pungence from belacan. I suggest you go for the plain prata because that really allows the sambal and the curry to shine. There are 2 types of curry to choose from, mutton and fish. The mutton curry gravy is so thick and luscious because 20 kilos of mutton bones and 4 kilos of lentils go into it. It is spicy and meaty and very, very hearty. If you prefer something with more tang, the fish curry might just be up your alley. It's made from good quality tenggiri, which is Spanish mackerel. And if you want another Malaysian-inspired riff on prata, go for the off-menu item of sarang burung, which means bird's nest. You get a ring of prata dough, and right in the middle are 2 runny eggs. Very nice.
Very, very nice. I totally agree with you. Prata for breakfast is perfect for me. But Hedy, what else should we try, if not the prata?
Oh, there are so many things to try. Okay, along the same row as the prata shop is Temasek Rojak, which sells an enticing array of Indian rojak. And this is one stall worth blowing your calories on because the third generation owner has kept largely to his grandfather's way of preparing the Indian rojak. So the batter of the rojak is still manually stirred by hand using a wooden oar at 2 a.m. from 2 a.m. in the morning. So it's a lot of hard work. And I'll suggest you go for the Tepong Kelapa, which is the coconut fritter. There is so much sweet nuttiness from the use of a lot of freshly grated coconut in it. And also you have to try the udang or prawn fritter, which is red, bright red, and packed with so many prawns that are so crispy, and the shells are even edible. And the best part is they don't poke around the inner part of your mouth when you're trying to bite into it. I strongly recommend having the Indian rojak there on the spot when you order because it is served piping hot and then everything is so crispy. And you really, really must try the rojak sauce, which is so wonderful because it is so thick and no flour is used to thicken the sauce. It is made from all 40 kilos of sweet potatoes every morning, freshly made. And even the nuts in it, they are fried in the store, crushed in house, and added to the sauce. And then there's a lot of stirring that goes on because it's so thick, and to keep it from burning. So it's a lot of details, a lot of effort that goes into this Indian rojak, and just talking about it makes me want to rush down there right now to have more of it.
That was ST Food Online editor Hedy Koo there, painting a very mouth-watering picture for us. Look out for Hedy's full story in the live section of the Sunday Times. Find out what else caught her eye in Tekka Centre. I can tell you it wasn't just the food. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay, and I'll see you tomorrow on The Big Story.